Welcome to The Artist Remains, a channel where we explore creativity, consciousness, authenticity, and human connection in an age increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence. I'm curator and artist P.E. Pinkman. Today we're going to explore the intersection of painting, architecture, and AI with New Jersey-based artist Linda Streicher. Hey, Linda. How are
Hi,
you?
thanks for having me, Paul.
Sure, it's great to see you, and I'm really pleased that you're able to be here with us. I wonder if you could just spend a minute talking about yourself, like help us understand your place as an artist in this world and what brought you to it.
Well, I guess I would consider myself a painter and an architect and a painter first. That's probably because I started with painting from a very early age. It's my first medium, and I use it to observe and to communicate. My background is in architecture as well, and I went into architecture as a painter. So it's really both. I started out in college doing business, and I picked up an art major and degree, realizing that it was too much a part of who I was to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a couple of years at Sotheby's, really doing accounting type work, but painting at night at the Art Students League. After a
Nice.
couple of years, I went back to school for architecture and I applied. I was really lucky because I only had an art portfolio. I had a little bit of architecture from my art and just from I was involved in the real estate division of Sotheby's. Very different than the architecture I would be studying.
Right.
But I was very lucky in that the program I went to at UPenn was run by David Leatherbarrow, who was this fantastic mentor in that he had us think about architecture from the experience of the inhabitant. And for me, with very little background using architectural conventional standards to design, I relied on my painting to envision spaces. And that just opened up a whole new door for me. So from that time on, I practiced architecture, but I really was also very dedicated to painting in a different way.
So you actually worked as an architect for a period of time?
hmm
And can you talk about what kinds of projects you might have done?
Well, I got licensed when I was in San Francisco for
Oh,
New
wow.
Jersey. It was the
Oh,
first year it went online. So I always worked for big AE firms, architecture and engineering firms.
okay.
And I basically did a lot of bathrooms, stairwells, some layouts, and I ended up doing a lot of interiors as well. So I worked in Philly. I worked for a little bit in San Francisco when I was there.
All right.
I had kids as well in there, so I took some time off and worked part-time. I
Right.
was about to go into residential and did some work on my own house and decided that I needed a year just to paint. I was just going to paint. So I rented this studio here in Morristown for 1 year.
Uh,
It's at least 15 years later. I mean, I started out in a corner with just an easel, and now I
right.
have this, space that we each share a studio. We each have a room, but it's just a great place. So just here.
Did, did you have time while you were doing the architectural stuff and being a parent to actually continue painting, or was there a period where you were not able to and then you kind of came back to it?
Honestly, I was never really able to. Well, I did overlap a little bit on small projects, very small
Okay.
projects, a kitchen, that type of thing. And then, of course, my own home, I was able to overlap. But it really was one or the other with a family. When I was in Philadelphia before I had kids, it was great. I could
Yeah.
work all day and then paint at night. It was a different scene.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me from the architectural perspective. I wanted to just touch on this idea that came to me in thinking about your work, which is architecture seems to me to be something that is a very prominent element in much of your work. Not all of it, but quite a bit. Or
hmm
architectural elements, even if not architecture itself. It also strikes me that if you're going to be using artificial intelligence, architecture would seem to be an area where artificial intelligence could excel, right? Because it's in the actual world versus fantasy things, it's something that relies heavily on math and understanding structure and understanding load and all of those kinds of things. I wonder if you, as somebody who has both of these disciplines in your background and that incorporates them into your work, if you have thought about it in that regard and ever explored AI from that perspective that you're aware of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and if I was more tech savvy, I would use it even more as a tool. I also feel very strongly as a person who uses their hands and believes in how you create is really important, what means you use to create. But AI is a tool for architecture. I mean, fantastic. When I first got out of school, I actually was decent in AutoCAD. It helped me get a job.
Wow.
And yeah, wow, it's surprising nowadays when you think
Right.
about how much
Exactly.
technology I can do. But I mean, I still use AutoCAD, but I don't use it nearly to its capabilities. And
Right.
I remember even when they were going to 3D with AutoCAD, I found it really confusing. Now I think
Uh,
I feel like if I had that skill, I would use it more, especially for what I'm doing now with these little chambers, and they're all different perspectives. And I know what I want in those chambers, but I have to use my mind really to alter the vantage point of the viewer looking
right.
into the room. And you and I had talked about that at one point. You're like, well, why don't you just have it rotate with the perspective? And I was like, yeah, I wish I could. But I am still working on that. That is something. And I do use AI. It was funny. I played around with it more recently because I'm thinking of what's happening in these chambers, and they're kind of surreal spaces with funky things going on. So I actually one of the pieces is behind me. It's a game
Yeah, it's
board.
great.
And thanks. And it's all playground equipment and kids on it. And I introduced kind of imaginary type things into it. I did some sketches on trace paper. I use a lot of references. So I'm Googling a lot for things. And it's really hard to get the right images from Google. Sometimes I'll
Oh, yeah.
use a model or if I need a person, I'll ask someone to help out, or I'll take a picture of myself from the right angle doing something. But I tried this in AI. Like I said, okay, a child, and I kept changing a girl child, maybe wearing this, maybe wearing that. Like I had to keep going through the sequences of it. Can you
Right.
make it higher? Can you view from like higher up? And it just couldn't. It just couldn't. And granted, I was using free AI,
Right.
but that is a case where I probably would use it, but it would also take away a step for me of drawing it by hand and figuring it out by hand. And a lot of why I like to paint and draw is because it helps me see the world around me and helps me put it together visually. And I feel like if I totally don't do that, I won't be able to process it the same way.
It's a really interesting question, isn't it? And it goes to exactly what I'm
Yeah.
talking about with these interviews and in this channel, which is what are these distinctions, right? What is the distinction between what artificial intelligence can do and what
Yeah.
an artist brings to that same equation? And obviously, in this case, one of those things is sort of internal need for that connection through your sketching and through your, preparation work that you don't
Yeah.
get. You lose that. And then it becomes incumbent upon you to talk about it to artificial intelligence to try to get the same thing. Obviously the results are not what you want. So there's some imagination there that is far more advanced in you as an artist and outside the current scope of artificial intelligence,
Right.
right?
And it's taking away some individuality and unique thinking as well.
Right.
I went to this 2 week program. It was in Portugal and Spain, and it was an
Mhm.
architectural program. It was about phenomenology. I actually did it after I did my art degree because I
Oh,
realized, wow, I'm really heavy on architecture and the experiential in architecture. And I found this program, and it talked really about how important as designers and creators our minds, it was really combining neuroscience and architecture and how
mm-hmm.
we think about spaces as a human being, how we experience them. So basically, our minds are embodied in our bodies. We get information from every single sense. And that's
Right.
very different than a computer or AI can do. It's just, it can get the results from somebody else who has a body and put it together. But I'm just talking about the unique one person, the artist who has their own experiences, own backgrounds, own perceptions, own histories. It makes it unique.
So much of what we do as people
Hmm.
is driven by how we feel. And I mean, not just like, I'm angry and I'm sad. That's a piece of it, but how we feel, how we touch things, how we smell things, how we see things. And none of those things are authentic to artificial intelligence. If artificial intelligence has some way of talking about those things, it's only from reading other
Right,
things, right? And so there is an inherent difference there that can't be, jumped over, at least yet, right? You can't expect artificial intelligence to understand how a rug feels under your feet
right.
when it has neither feet nor a rug, right?
I mean, you can
So,
tell it what you want.
right, you can tell it what you want. And I think that's where the limitations start to come in. And of course, there's a point at which these things are continuing to evolve and you wonder what will
Yeah.
happen. But does a robot, if they make these into robots, will a robot be able to feel? And then are those feelings the same as human feelings, which I think are very complicated and not as simplistic as touch a rug, feel it,
Right,
There's
right.
a lot of other stuff. So when you think about spaces, because your work really intersects with spaces a lot. What is it that's going through your thought process when you're trying to create these spaces, these rooms, these environments,
Mm.
and how are you bringing that into your work? Like, are you feeling them? Are you seeing them? All of the above? I'd love to hear your ideas on that.
Usually evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Like my attitude towards the space. I
Eh,
call it once I tend to work on the composition or the structure of it first. And that is usually somewhat okay, so there is a feeling to it. Whether I want to unground someone, I'm talking about different series now. So I do different types of spaces. There's spaces where the viewer enters the space, and that's usually a more painterly space and a surreal type space.
mm-hmm.
And in that type of space, I will maybe alter the ground, the floor, or have a ceiling kind of slashing in or walls based on more or less how I want the space to feel claustrophobically, what's happening beyond. It's usually about something beyond a space and getting through the space, the way you journey through the space. And once I kind of lay that out on the canvas in terms of composition,
Right? Yep.
I work with a lot of layers of paint and I start playing with colors, what I think wants to be bright, where my light source is, what's happening. And it just starts evolving. Once I'm really in the painting, I consider myself inhabiting the canvas.
Right.
I really think about it very much artwork as a home where I don't know if I've said this
Wow,
before to you, but
interesting. Yeah.
the wall or the room, and it goes for installations as well, is the neighborhood, right? Like
Right.
you put a painting in a room, that's the neighborhood it has to talk to.
Right. Uh-huh.
And then the canvas itself becomes the plot of land. And within that plot of land, the composition is the structure. And the structure is the structure of the painting, but it's also the structure of, say, the house. Once you get painting, you get into a rhythm. You can
Right.
feel it. And the painting starts to talk back to you. You have this great dialogue. So
Right.
it's, yeah. And
Sometimes not so great dialogue too.
oh, no, no, no. I mean, I remember thinking, this painting better shut up because
Right.
it's not very nice.
Exactly. Leave me alone.
Go away. You want it to go away, but it can't. It like,
Right, exactly.
so you have this dialogue back and forth, and, and you kind of inhabit it. And I think at that point, this house becomes a home. And then you finish a painting,
Right.
and it's a very strange feeling when it's finished and you walk away. But then you have a viewer come in and say
Mm,
you're not there. It now becomes an abandoned house.
right. Right. Yeah.
You leave your marks. There's clues as to who you are, as to your process, as to your time that you've inhabited that space. And I think that, like, talk about the premium of humans doing something by hand. it's that process. You see it happen, you feel it, and I think that's really important in
Do
artwork.
you do you think about the viewer? I always think of all artwork as having three components: the artist, who the creator artist, the thing itself, and the viewer. And each one
Okay.
of those things has both, there's a synergy and there's also an individuation, right? The
Hmm.
object, you can see an object, a sculpture, whatever, you can see a painting without any reference to the person who created it, with no information at all. It literally is only you, the viewer, and that object talking. There is no way of knowing what the artist intended, right? So
Right.
I'm wondering if, when you do your work, are there points through the process where you think about the viewer and whether or if they will interact with it a certain way?
I think about the viewer all the time, but I also equate myself as the viewer too, because I'm viewing
Okay.
it as I'm working. And that's actually why I like the game boards, because I really want my viewers not just to see a painting and walk away, but to be
Mm-hmm.
able to want to be closer to it and to journey through the painting. The way you
Right,
would
right,
move
right,
your
right.
eyes, your body follows your eyes, essentially, mentally. And that's why I like the game board. So yeah, I'm always thinking about that, how the viewer might move through a painting. And revealing like certain layers that I want to leave, because I do have a lot of drips in my work and things like that that you really don't know or see. I know you kind of play with that a bit too,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
with the transparency and like because I'm so I do think about the viewer a lot. I especially think about the viewer because I want the viewer to enter the painting. Like to me, that's one of the most important things.
I would think so. It's been my experience of your work, especially in the installations, but also in the individual pieces.
Hmm.
You mentioned just a moment ago your game boards. I think the game boards are a really good example of that, because even if they don't play the game, the minute they see it, their automatic reaction is, this is something I'm supposed to interact with. If you take a box, like any, Jenga or whatever, and everything's still in the box, and you put the box on a table, everybody looking at that box is going to know that's a game you're supposed to play with it, right? And your game boards have a similar reaction, I think, because people look at them and there's this dualistic kind of thing going on. It's artwork, but it's also a game, right? You
Right.
want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I also think about it as a map. You are
Ah,
here.
interesting.
So I like that connection. To me, it just seems so obvious. If I want the person to enter the painting, a game board is actually doing that. I was thinking about my Chutes and Ladders. That's what started it.
Uh-huh.
Because I played that a lot. And I looked at the little individual squares. I bought the same version that I played with when I was a kid. And it was really funny because you occupy those squares and they're telling you something. They're trying to teach children to do good deeds.
Do you remember what it was like to play that game when you were a kid?
Yeah. Sadly, I played it all by myself against myself in my basement many times.
What was the draw for you? What was it? Do you remember what you were feeling when you were a child playing that game, even by yourself? Like, what was so compelling?
I was working on a small piece, trying out
Hmm.
something new, and I've been very interested in childhood playgrounds because they're simple structures that encourage the imagination to go
Right,
wild. So I was just doing that, a little piece with these little chamber squares and putting playground structures and kids in these squares because I really hadn't
right.
used figures much in my work. And I said, this is Shoots and Ladders. I looked online and I said, oh my God, even the colors match Shoots and Ladders.
That's so funny. Yeah, connection to your own past. That's very cool.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. So I have the good fortune of knowing some of your earlier work, and when I go back to a couple of the things I can think of, there was at least one or two pieces where you had what appeared to be people in motion, as well as sort of maybe reflections in a window, almost look like what you see when you look at a subway car going by quickly, where you see these kind of shapes and then these partial figures moving along. What was the relationship of that to this? Was this a kind of something that you were experimenting with at the time? Because at the same time, I know you're still doing these architectural things and or architecturally based pieces and installation pieces.
Yeah. Those sliced photos that I did with
Uh-huh.
encaustic and paint, I just did a new one. I just
Did
was
you?
working on one is that, yeah, actually is a submission, so I'll see. But I did for my architectural thesis, it was a train station, but I spent most of the time researching. I took a train from Philadelphia to Atlantic City, two trains. I took SEPTA to New Jersey Transit. It
Right.
was like a 2-hour commute, I think, something crazy. And I
Probably.
took, yeah, but I loved it. It went over, SEPTA was underground and it went over the Ben Franklin Bridge
Wow.
and then into New Jersey. So you go from underground to this bridge with these blue structures whizzing past you to
Uh,
these enormous New Jersey parking lots. And so I just studied this train. I videotaped it, I photographed it, I painted little vignettes of what it felt like to occupy this space and how people would rush by you. And that's when I started to slice photos. And I just came across it the other day because I was looking at what was the name of my thesis, and that started that whole series. And it's
they're very
still,
effective. That's why it comes to mind. I mean, you
yeah,
feel as if you're in there with them when you're standing in front of them, you know.
yeah, it's still ongoing, and I plan to use a lot more. I kind of changed it a little bit. Like I just worked on a work where I wanted the figures ghosted, and I have them more kind of in movement, just blurred out a little bit, but it's not
Hmm.
quite the same. It's a little different.
Right. Well, that's the
Yeah.
nature of what we do, isn't it? Everything is always just a little different than what we did before.
Right. And sometimes what you did before might be a little bit better. I mean, I like using photographs in the work too.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So let me think about like, have you ever or would you ever work with artificial intelligence to sort of review your own work and get feedback from it?
Yeah, it's kind of come up because I've been talking to other artists who have done that.
Right. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I will say I would rather have human feedback, I believe. That's definitely, I wouldn't trust AI judgment. I'd be curious to hear it, but I wouldn't trust it the same way
Yeah, I think
because
you
it doesn't
can't.
have the emotion. It can, I
It
mean,
can't.
my paintings are all about your experiences as a person and your perceptions and your memories and what it brings out from you. So AI doesn't actually have that personal feeling.
It doesn't. And I give you an example, and I'm going to force myself to find this guy's podcast or whatever it was. Maybe it was just a video. I saw a video piece of a video, and it was this guy who was a writer. He was working with AI on a road trip that he was doing to help him sort of craft his thoughts as he was going. And for some reason, in the middle of that process, as you know, as we do, right? What's nice, I'm going to say, is one thing that's really nice in talking to you is you're not afraid of AI. So many artists I talk to they're really afraid of it. They think it's
Hmm.
going to like destroy the universe and all this stuff. And you seem like totally chill about just I'm going to work with it however I feel like working with it. So this is kind of what this writer was doing, and then suddenly in the middle of the process, he asked whichever of the artificial intelligence platforms he was using, "What's your favorite color?" And it couldn't answer him.
Ooh.
Why would artificial intelligence have this idea of a favorite color, right? And then what would it use as a basis for making an answer to that? And I thought this is sort of what is behind some of these hesitancies that I think that we all have, is that you know right out of the gate that it's not going to give you the same kind of perception as a person will because it hasn't lived an experience, right?
When you said that, I was thinking about how our body reacts to something. And actually, I
Yeah.
don't remember the word for it, but there's some word for the reaction that somebody has. It's the reaction somebody's body has when they've been completely awed by this work of art. And the heart races, but I think this was describing it as a disease where these people were committed. They'd go to Florence or Rome and see these incredible churches and works and they would faint essentially from
Right,
seeing
right,
it.
right, right.
And that's human. And
Yeah.
and even just seeing art or something in life that really excites you, your heart beats, you feel it.
It's true.
That's how you get
Do,
favorite color, you know? You feel it.
do you look for these qualities in the work of other artists? When you look
Yeah.
at other artists' work, are these the kinds of things that, even if you're not necessarily focused on it, you would say are part of what you're experiencing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 100%. And like you feel more towards maybe someone's art than someone else's art. Like there's certain art that just
Right.
draws you in. And even the same person, you might go crazy over a work they did that just and it's not incredibly different than everything they did, but this one work just like does it for you. And that's
Right.
it.
I always wonder what that is, what these subtleties are that make such a big difference. It's
Yeah.
always so interesting to me, and I don't know that any artificial intelligence is anywhere near that place yet. You know, it's
I mean,
interesting.
I think I'm thinking of Westworld right now,
Right,
where maybe the
exactly.
computer's going to be so good.
So we're kind of coming to the end. So I did want to just kind of get an idea from you. What are you working on now? Where do you see your work taking you?
So I always have a couple series going on, and I bounce around between them, and there can be honestly years in between, and then I go back because something's triggered.
Uh huh.
I'm still working on my game boards. I have
Cool.
another version that I'm doing. So with each thing that I do, I look at it and I say, "Oh, I really wish I had done more of this in it." And then the next work is about the next idea. And for me, I did the Shoots and Ladders game based more on the Shoots and Ladders. Then I did another one that was more about the playground, trying to get it a
Cool.
little more painterly and atmospheric. Because I mean, I love painting because that's how you get that feeling, the sense of a space.
Right.
And so the one
Absolutely.
I just started, it's still in the very beginning stage.
Uh-huh.
It's basically getting ideas from Disney because Disney is like the master of creating atmospheres and
Oh yeah.
pretend types of spaces. So, and it's also children's playing. So it is meant to encourage imagination.
Right.
Although I feel that they try to force you into imagining what they want you to imagine a little too much. And I want mine to be a little bit more open and more reflective of the real world as well, just more commentary on the real world.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I'm working on now, where each chamber becomes its own environment rather than just a box. I started using these grids to play with the artwork in relationship to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the viewer's relationship to the painting's relationship to the wall, therefore the viewer's relationship to the space, the room.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can totally see that. Especially with your installation pieces, this comes out very clearly. It's easy at first to walk into a room of your work and not necessarily know what's going on. And then you actually takes a minute before you realize that you are actually participating in the work. You just don't think of it that way. We're so used to walking into an exhibit and the works on the wall are like the proscenium of a stage, you know.
Hmm.
You are out here and it's over there, but when you have your pieces up and they're coming out of the wall, even the game boards coming out of the wall and doing all these things, there's actually you as an audience member are part of the piece. And that's a very cool experience when you allow yourself to think about it that way. Because then the spaces become more real, you know.
Right. And this goes back to my days trying to figure out architecture using two dimensions.
Hmm.
is that I like the boundary of having to stay within two dimensions to alter space. So
Interesting.
that's somewhat of an important aspect. I'm not necessarily, I mean, my installations did come out into space, but they were based on two-dimensional conventions.
So where can we see your work? Where should we go
Okay.
to see more work of Linda Streicher?
Okay. Well, my website is lstriker.com
Okay.
and Instagram, it's at lstriker studio.
I'll look forward to seeing more of your work in upcoming exhibits, and
Thank
good
you.
luck with the development of the pieces. This sounds fascinating as always.
Thank you. It's great to
Thanks so
talk to you,
much, Linda.
Paul. Thank you.
Same here. Take care.
Take care. Bye.